Applied Dynamics is a full-service electromechanical apparatus sales and service company, committed to keeping our clients up and running. Part of our commitment to our ongoing customer service is to keep our clients up to date with the latest information. Here's an informative video from one of our supply partners.
All right, so hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar. In this presentation, you're going to learn about Hoist pre-operational safety inspections. This webinar will cover what hoist and overhead crane operators should do at the start of every shift before operating a hoist and crane. Presenting today will be Peter Cook, our training manager, covering rigging, hoist, and load securement. My name is Gisela Clark. I'm the social media and e-learning specialist at Columbus McKinnon and will be your host for today's webinar. We are recording the session today, and the recording link will be added to our YouTube channel. All in attendance will receive a link to the recording. Everyone is in listen-only mode, so we encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A pane on the right side of your page, which many of you already have had the privilege to try out, and thank you for putting in all your comments. That's great. We're going to take 5 minutes at the end to answer your questions. So please type those in and we'll take them in the order that they were asked. We appreciate your attention today, and now I'm going to turn over the meeting to Peter so that we can start. Peter?
Hi, good morning everybody. So we'll get rolling here and talk about hoist pre-operational inspection. This is something that your operator should be doing on the start of every shift for any equipment, hoisting equipment they're going to operate. If something's not going to be operated, then obviously they wouldn't have to do this. And we'll get right into what a pre-operational hoist inspection does. This ensures that their equipment is operating properly, and if there is a deficiency, they can bring it up to the maintenance crews or a qualified person to take a look at it and not continue on and operate damaged equipment. So what we're going to do is identify the safety standards that apply to hoists, conduct pre-operation, what do you got to do to conduct pre-operation inspections, and we'll save the questions for last. And at any time, or if we don't have time to finish all the questions, certainly, I will contact each one of you individually and answer your questions. All right, so let's get into the safety standards that cover hoist. So I like to always start off with this because where do these safety standards come from, and how do I find out more about inspection of my equipment? The number one thing is to get the owner-operator's manual for the brand of hoist that you have and the company that made that hoist. That's the start, and then you want to refer yourself to the industry standard. So if it's an underhung hoist, it's ASME B3016, whether that hoist is electric, air-operated, or a manual hoist. And a lot of people don't realize that some of those large electric hoists fall into the same category as the small manual hoist. So whatever you do with the small manual hoist, you have to do the same thing with the large electrical or powered hoist, I should say. For lever-operated tools, fall under a different spec. It reads fairly close to the 16 spec. It is B30.21 for lever hoist. And whether you have a chain type, wire rope type, sometimes we can have a synthetic. Instead of chain, we'll have a synthetic, almost like synthetic sling for the lifting, and so that would all fall under B30.21. And it's important to know what standard your hoist equipment is. It's interesting to note that when you look at a hoist, that there are multiple standards that apply to it. So here, just a simple lever tool, we have B30.10 for the hook inspection and 21 for the lever hoist. So sometimes there are multiple standards for one piece of equipment, so you would need two standards to reference for the operation and inspection of that unit. And that let's look at a fairly simple crane, which is a jib crane here, which falls under the category of a monorail or an underhung, and that falls under the category of B30.11. And so the inspection of that equipment would fall under B30.11. The hoist would still fall under 16. And then if you look here, we got B30.10 for hooks, slings, 9, 20 for below the hook lifting equipment, rigging hardware, 26. So we got a whole library here of things that need to be looked at as far as for inspection is concerned. And reality is your operator should be looking at that equipment prior to doing any lift, especially the rigging equipment. The pre-operational inspection of the jib and the hoist only have to be done at the start of the shift, but your rigging equipment should be looked at as well. So let's start the pre-operational inspection, what your operator should be doing. So there's two general classes of inspection. I just want to briefly go over those so that we don't mix up what this type of inspection is. We have the frequent, also referred to as a pre-operational inspection. Records of these inspections don't need to be kept, okay? So you do them, you want to train your people to do them, and we highly recommend they do it at the start of every shift. And what they can see, obviously they're going to be on the ground, so visually they're going to have to look at what they can see from the ground. Or the how does it differ from a periodic inspection? A periodic inspection is a very detailed inspection, and records must be kept. And this is where someone's going to actually look at a chain hoist link by link, or the wire rope hoist entirely through the entire wire rope, and maybe get up on a scissor lift. And actually, they do have to get on a scissor lift and look at the mounting and the torque and everything like that, and document it, cross the T's, dot the I's, and that's what the periodic inspection is. Periodic inspections, how often you need to do a periodic inspections? Well, for normal service, if you're lifting less than 65% of rated loads and 15% of the time, you want to do an annual inspection. Heavy service, if it exceeds that normal service at least twice a year, and in severe service, you want to go quarterly. And so severe service is abnormal operating conditions that you wouldn't normally see in like a normal atmospheric conditions, and chemicals, heat, extreme cold, caustic environments, anything that's not normal, then you want to look at that 4 times a year and do a periodic inspection and document that. So let's continue on. So here we have we'll start off simply with a simple lever tool. And so if an operator were to grab this tool, should they use it? And so I'm just looking at the picture here, and myself, no, I would not use that tool. And why would I not use that? So they should recognize that that's a tool that should not be operated, so that your operator should recognize that right away and get themselves different tools. So what are the key things that they should be spotting that should jump out of them? A broken latch. Sometimes the latches just break just by mishandling, but that should be a telltale sign that maybe something is wrong. So it draws their attention to it. Latches are required on hoisting equipment unless it constitutes a hazard, but latches are required for the most part. And without the latch, you might think everything's okay, but the hook could be starting to stretch or it was overloaded. And so the latch is a good indicator of that. Oh, it draws my attention and it has some concern, so I would want to bring that to the attention of a competent person, someone that's been trained to look at inspecting these or maintenance of these. So that this is your operator should jump out of. The chain here has been stretched and the handle's bent. So this is definitely a severely overloaded lever hoist, which is common in lever hoist, and that definitely should not be operated. But sometimes it's not so severe, or the hook stretch is not so severe, but the latch just kind of springs out, and so we want to take measurements and look at the manufacturer, what they recommend, or the ASME spec will tell you as well, B10 of what's a rejection criteria for that hook. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper. So frequent inspections, no records required, and we actually supply some checklists. We have our sales guys do some safety courses and supply them. We also sell a crane operator safety kit. We supply these. And the reality is you could laminate these and put them on your crane or your pendant so that operators remember to do them. And I know something we're starting internally in CM is we're going to make all our operators do this and sign off every day. It's not required, but we just want to do better than what the safety standards say. So first thing you want to do is make sure the crane is not tagged out of service, looking for safety and warning labels. They all need to be on there to be compliant, and it has the do's and don'ts. Your control devices, make sure the markings match what the functions of the crane are or the hoisting equipment. Again, the hook, we're going to look for damaged hooks of that nature. We're going to check our limit switches and be sure they're operating properly. A limit switch is basically a shut-off switch where you don't want to tube lock into the bottom of a crane or a hoist, and sometimes they're often in the lowering direction as well, so we don't want to hit the floor and possibly spool out our wire rope or remove our chain from the hoist and it comes down on the operator. So we want to make sure limit switches. Not all hoists have limit switches. Stop limit switches. Some have slip clutches which act as a limit switch. So we need to know what type of hoist we have and what are the limit switches in the hoist and how they work. And so your operators need to be trained on that. Unusual sound. Maybe they hear a sound they haven't heard in the past. Hey, I never heard that sound before, so that's something I would want to bring to someone's attention. It's a weird sound, or it just that doesn't sound right. That should be a red flag. Is there oil leaking out of it? The hoist chain, as best we can, check the integrity of the chain, kind of look around, and we see any nicks, gouges, heat damage, things of that nature. We'll get into that a little bit deeper. We want to look at that wire rope. Reeving, is it reeved properly? Is it doing it? If it's not reeved properly, the crane hook will or the hoist hook will be doing some abnormal twisting or erratic movements. The brake functions, you know, if I stop, is it stopping, or is it drifting downwards when I stop? And then general housekeeping and lighting, you know, that's a good thing to have, so there's no tripping hazards, things of that nature. That we want to keep our work areas as neat as possible. So that's the checklist, and we're going to go dive a little bit deeper into that today. So lockout tags. Never want to operate a hoist that's been tagged out of service. I know sometimes that third-party inspectors will come in and they will tag things out based on what they see, but they have no authority to remove it or anything like that. They'll just tag it, and some places will, be honest with you, will remove those tags because they have work to do and they'll continue to use it. That's a bad situation. So if there is a lockout tag or a tag that says danger, do not use it, there's a reason for that, and you want to see the appropriate person or safety personnel, maintenance crew, and ask what's going on. Usually they will know about it. Make sure that everything has a rated load, that you understand what the rated load is, and find what the weakest link in the system is. You could have a monorail system that has a 2-ton crane and the monorail is rated for 5-ton, and then you can't lift 5-ton, right? You have to find the weakest link. Or your rigging might be weaker than the tire system. You might have an eye-bolt that's only good for 500 pounds. So that's things we need to look for. Identification. You may not be able to see it from the floor, but you know, the make, model, serial number, that should pretty much jump out. Even if it's not, you want to bring that to the attention of the maintenance crews. You might not be able to read a serial number. Obviously, you probably won't be able to read the serial number from the floor, but certainly you'll be able to see the manufacturer of that unit and be aware of where the serial number tag is so that you can see that it's there. And again, all warning labels need to be on there, and be sure that that would be a certified hoist. Let's look at a powered hoist here, electric hoist. You have pendant controls. And again, these things kind of are out there flapping in the breeze, so they can get struck by tow motors. They can be crushed between loads. We want to make sure all the controls are marked clearly, that we can read them clearly, that it's not obscured. Here you see up, down, right, left, forward, reverse. Now sometimes right, left, forward, and reverse get confusing to people. Depending on how you're standing. Is it my right? Which right is it? Is it the right from the control panel? So this is not mandatory, but what I recommend people to do is put north, south, east, and west. That's pretty clear. Mark the bottom of your hoist or somewhere on the building where they can see north, south, east, west. Then it's definite, right? So it's not relative. You know, what's forward, what's reverse, depending on how I'm standing. That gets very confusing, but that's common in pendants. So you may want to relabel that north, south, east, west. That's just a recommendation and eliminate some confusion. Check for any cracks in the pendant, anything like that, because this is a piece of electrical equipment, and we want to avoid electrical shock. So we're looking for any cracks. Buttons can get cracked as well, or become missing, and we don't want that. So there's a picture where a button gets cracked. We have there in the bottom, the bottom picture there of it being held together by rubber bands. Not a good situation at all. You see in the picture to the far right, there's a wire sticking out there. So why is that sticking out? That could be an electrical hazard. It may be a wire that's not used in the pendant for whatever reason. There's more functions available that weren't utilized. But however, it could create electrical shock, and that's certainly something we want to take out of service. Anytime you're operating, again, this goes to good housekeeping. You want to be sure that there's nothing beneath the crane materials that are subject to damage. In the event there's limit switch failure, you know, in the event the block must not be allowed to contact the trolley, drum, or shiv. So if you're doing a pre-operational check and you think it's going to hit the bottom of the hoist, that the limit switch is working, stop and figure out is the limit switch malfunctioning, or is it one of the hoists that have a slip clutch? We don't want to test a slip clutch on a pre-operational inspection every shift. That's something that should be done on a periodic. And so we want to find that out. And so what type of hoist that you have, or it could be just be that the limit switch has failed and we want to get that replaced.
Excuse me,
And
Peter?
fair to stop.
I'm sorry. I wanted to jump in with a quick polling question, if you don't mind.
Right? Sure.
Okay, here we go. A question for everybody. What type of inspection requires documented records that it was done? Is it frequent, periodic, operator, or rigger? Again, what type of inspection requires documented records that it was done? Frequent, periodic, operator, or rigger. And for those of you that are on an iPad, unfortunately you won't be able to vote. You can shoot me your answer on the Q&A pane and I can add it in. It looks like right now, Peter, half have voted, about 60% have voted. And it looks like 90% periodic, 5% frequent, 5% operator. Can you go ahead and share with us what the answer is?
Yeah, it will be the periodic inspection is the documented inspection. That is the full detailed inspection from top to bottom where I said you dot the I's, cross the T's, you have paperwork on it, or you do it through electronic means to do that. But yeah, it's definitely the periodic.
Okay, thank you.
So let's talk about operating controls. If I hit the up button, the hoist goes up and it goes down. I hit the trolley, whether it's left, right, it responds to the exact function of what the pendant says. If it does not, that's a very dangerous situation, especially in the hoisting aspect, because we're running through the wrong circuit, so we can technically not have limits at that point. And so therefore we can break limits, we can run the hoist chain out of the hoist, or the wire rope out of the hoist, or ram into the hoist and break chain or break wire rope, and that's a dangerous situation. We definitely don't want to switch buttons up or have buttons relabeled, and you know, it has to be fixed at the hoist and make sure that it responds to exactly the way the pendant is worded. Again, if there's a warning device such as a horn or a light or anything of that nature, make sure that that's working properly. If anything fails to operate, again, contact your maintenance and they will get the proper people in place. If they can't do it, they will get the proper people in place to fix that situation. Like I said, we get into hooks a little bit deeper. Hooks fall under the spec of ASME B30.10, and you can see here some extreme cases of hook failure, and then some not so extreme. So in that bottom picture there, that's what I'm talking about. If you didn't have that latch, that hook may seem okay. It doesn't look too bad. You know, to me, I probably wouldn't be able to detect it either, but for sure that has been stretched or overloaded. It needs to be replaced, and that latch is telling us that. So that's why it's so important to have the latch. Not only is it a means to secure onto your loads, but it's also a nice visual for the operator to jump out and say, hey, something might be wrong here. And it's required on hoist. So look for any deformation. Throat opening, 5% not to exceed a 1/4 inch, or what's recommended by the manufacturer. So ASME, that's the 5% or 1/4 inch. Manufacturers always have theirs published in their books as well, so if you know that you have that manufacturer owner's manual available, look in there. What you should be doing is if you haven't done so already, you should be documenting your throat openings, and you can put that usually on our owner's manual. You can document right on the owner's manual, or you can do it in your own system. And so when the next time you go to do your periodic inspection, it should match. And if it's starting to get larger or something to grow, something went wrong, and you want to, that is a telltale sign that we should get it replaced. Any wear exceeding 10%. So if we have any wear areas, we're going to see it. Mostly we're going to see it in the saddle where everything connects to, so that we want to look at that as well. And then sometimes we can have mixed gouges, things of that nature. So those need to be looked at as well. And the severity of them, it depends how severe they are and what the locations of them are. Again, but your operators or crane operator is really not trained in inspection, but if they're seeing a nick or a gouge, that should, whether it's superficial, they think, if it's causing them concern, you want them to bring it up to the maintenance group. So here's a hook that's been intentionally damaged, but it was not. It was for a good reason, but the reasons after they did it was bad that they did this practice. They put X marks on the hooks, and they did that so they can have a point to measure on the hook, so that they can record it for periodic inspections. but they put a stress riser in the hook, they damage it in the process of doing that. And some crane hooks have dots or raised surfaces where you can measure those, others do not. And the owner's manual will tell you where to measure. So in this case, the intentions were good, but the outcome was bad. That hook had to come out of service. And then you can see field modifications that someone did in that picture there, which is pretty extreme. We don't want to modify a manufacturer's hook. So we're looking for any type of damage, anything that's causing us concern. Definitely bring it up. Tag that hoist out. You don't want to operate the crane. Tag it out of service and bring it to the attention of a qualified person or a competent person. Hooks should rotate freely without any load, and that's important because we do not want the chain or the wire rope to twist. Right? We want the hook to rotate so that it can orientate itself to the road, and if it can't, it's going to twist up your chain or wire rope, and that's going to cause the hoist to jam up or to damage your chain and wire rope. So definitely those hooks should be rotating freely, and if it's not doing that very easily, something's wrong.
Okay, I have another polling question to ask. And this one is, what ASME standard covers manual and electric underhung hoist inspection? Is it ASME B30.9, ASME B30.10, ASME B30.16, or ASME B30.26? Which one is correct? What ASME standard covers manual and electric underhung hoist inspection? 30.9, 30.10, 30.16, or 30.26? Oh, we're really split on this one. Go ahead and take a guess. The answers are all over the place. So, yeah, we have, I'll give it another couple seconds. And while you guys are voting, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for typing in questions. We've got quite a few in the pipeline, Peter. And as soon as Peter's done sharing what he's going to share with you today, we're going to address them one at a time and try to get you guys all wrapped up and out of here like we promised at 45 after. So, all right, Peter, it looks like about 75% have voted, and 4% voted for 1, 35% for 2, 56% for 3, and 6% for 4. So again, the big bulk is between B30.10 and B30.16. So you want to share the answer?
It's actually B30.16 for the hoist, and in that document, it'll reference B30.10, but 16 is the document for the hoist, overall hoist inspection, which you would also have to get B30.10 if you wanted to learn more about that hook inspection. And so 16, if those of you that answered 10, you were a little bit right. But it is definitely 16. Okay. One thing I want to tell I talked about limit switches already, but I want to talk about if you have two-speed hoists or a variable frequency drive. Obviously, you can speed up the hoist, you go slow, you go fast. You want to test the limit switch at the slow speed, and you want to test the limit switch at the fast speed. So you want to be sure that it's working properly for both speeds. All right. And if they fail to operate properly, again, you want to take that hoist out of service. Chain inspection. Usually operators aren't going to clean the chain. We say this though, clean the chain. It should be cleaned regularly. If it's getting dirty, if they can wipe it, they take a rag, and just as they're going in the up and down motion, they can wipe it off. But operators should try to keep their chains as clean as possible, because in the event it did get damaged, grease or mud or anything like that is not going to cover it up. And so if their operator comes across the equipment and it's just overly dirty and they definitely can't even see the chain, that's something they're going to want to start right off with and just say, no, we can't use this because I cannot tell if the chain is in good condition. Once that happens, or if the hoist is relatively clean, you want to look for interlink wear, and that's where the two chains join together. That's where most of your wear is going to occur. So basically, you want to just kind of quickly where you can see it from. As best you can. It take too long to look at it, so you just want to, you're obviously can only do so much of the chain, and then eventually it's going to be all over your head. So it's good to just do that. Nicks, gouges, bent, broken links, heat damage, twisted links, stretching, corrosion, and any chemical damage. So basically anything that they seem abnormal, cause them concern, take out of service. And then lubrication. Does the chain seem dry to them? Hey, this seems fairly dry. That's not a good thing for powered hoist. If that chain seems dry, they definitely want to get it lubricated, especially where the chain join. Really, what we really want you to lubricate is where the chain is joined together. That's where all your heat and your wear and your movement's going to occur. And so for electric hoist, it's really critical to do that, lubricate that chain. And if you do that, and the operators are aware of the lubrication, they're checking that on a daily basis, and as soon as they realize it's getting dry, it's getting lubricated, you're going to have chain that lasts a long time. Without doing that, you're going to be replacing a lot of chain or possibly replacing a lot of components internally in the hoist, because if the chain is starting to wear, it's going to start damaging the hoist. We're going to draw amperage in the hoist, and so a lot of things can go wrong. It's going to compound. So it all starts with the operator. Lubrication is the easiest thing to check, but one of the most important things to maintain. So there's some visual examples. Again, very extreme. However, we do want to just kind of show you some visual examples of what damaged chain looks like. It's that interlink wear that's going to be more common than most of these, and possibly nicks, gouges, things of that nature are going to suffice too, is if they're running up near sharp corners. Which the hoist chain should never touch anything, and it should never be used to rig.
Peter, I've got a quick question. What type of chain is used in our CM electric and manual hoist?
That's a good question, and I didn't bring that up in the slide there. Star grade chain is what we use in our powered hoist, and that's important. Star grade chain is a specially engineered chain by Columbus McKinnon. It's got a high case hardness to it because it runs fast speeds over a lift wheel, so it can resist wear and the heat and everything that I just talked about. It definitely needs the lubrication. But it's not like rigging chain. It stretches very little, maybe 3%. You don't even see it. Where rigging chains can stretch, and I think our chains stretch up to 20%. It's required. 20% is required by ASTM, but we're getting about 27% stretch in rigging chains. But hoist chain can't do that, and we don't want it to do that because it has to go through lift wheels. We need it dimensionally stable. That's why we never rig with it. Our manual hoist, we use what's known as disc grade chain, and it's a specially formulated chain for a manual hoist, which is a through hardened chain. But that's a good question. The hoist chain is not the same type of chains for rigging, and the hoist chain should never come in contact with loads.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Thanks for the question. Wire rope inspection. If you have a wire rope hoist, they're looking for broken wires. 12 randomly distributed wires in one rope lay is cause for remove for service, or 4 broken wires in one strand. And if you're not familiar with the term rope lay, rope lay is the distance one strand wraps around the core. It's the horizontal distance. That's a rope lay, and we're looking for broken wires. So again, operator may find some broken wires. You may tell them, hey, if you see any broken wires, bring it to our attention, and let the maintenance crew or the people trained in inspection make the determination whether that wire rope needs to come out of service. There are some things that go beyond that. Any types of core protrusions or breaks near switch fittings. Now this is something more up near the hoist, but definitely valley breaks, things of that nature, where you have one wire coming through the valley, bird caging, or it seems to be unwinding. We don't want to see any kinks or crushing or heat damage in wire rope. Lubrication, again, is definitely needed for the wire ropes. Wire ropes articulate when they move, so if without lubrication they can't articulate very well, so it's going to cause a kink, and a kink's going to cause broken wires, and again, the compounding effect. So again, all starts with the operator. If the operator recognizes that, hey, we're running dry here, we need to get this lubricated, and you can look in the O&M manuals, and they will tell you how to properly lubricate. Web strap hoists, wear, cuts, UV degradation. These hoists are used outdoors a lot, especially by linemen, so they're subject to sun and heat UV damage, so they can fade, and that weakens the materials. So any heat damage, distortion, no knots, excessive grease, oil, and grit and dirt, because that grease and oil can attract dirt and material, and that can start breaking fibers, so we don't want that. More material or broken stitching. And there's some of the examples that I talked about. So again, some extreme examples, but really no cut. When you look, the biggest one is going to be cuts, tensile damage, those small cuts that you see on the left-hand side at the very bottom. Small little cuts and frays are not allowed. They're just no damage is allowed for synthetic materials, so you need to take that out of service. And then safety end stops. We want to be sure safety end stops. Powered hoist, have them. Wire rope hoist are anchored properly. For wire rope hoist, I'm not sure if I had a slide on this. I might be getting ahead of myself, but at least should make sure there's 2 wraps of the drum on a wire rope hoist. On the lower position, there should be at least 2 wraps left on there. And if there's not, that's a problem. For chain hoist, we want to see a safety end stop or anchored to the hoist itself to be sure that it's properly going to, it's in the last resort. So manual hoist, we're going to have end stops and anchor the hoist. Electric hoist, we can be anchored hoist, or we're probably going to have a fairly large end stop. So in the event the limit switch don't work, that's our last fail-safe, so that we don't run the chain out of the hoist. And that happens more time than I care to admit, where crews installing forget to put those end stops on and don't set the limit switches, and the operators aren't trained, and then one day they run the chain out of the hoist and the chain falls on them, which is not good. If you want, operators want to check the brakes for lever hoists, 100 pounds times the number of load supporting parts of chain. So one single reeve of chain, 100 pounds, 2-part reeve, 200 pounds. Electric powered hoists are 50 pounds. Why the difference? Lever hoists need a little bit of force to close the brake, and so that's why the 100 pounds where underhung hoists don't need that. So 50 pounds times the load supporting parts of chain or wire rope, and that you can find relatively light loads in any area. An operator can have that and easily find that to check it out, check brake functions, and that doesn't take long. You just raise it up a little bit, look at it, see if it's drifting, and if it's not, we're good to go. And then look up, are we attached properly? So there, you can see a trolley is not attached properly. It's spaced too far out. The spacing's wrong. It's actually crooked, or it could have been overloaded and it's actually bending. So definitely an operator should see that. You could see that. They'd want to take that out of service immediately. Or you can see that someone just wrapped a chain around a piece of I-beam, which is very dangerous to do, and they just hook into it. Not very good. Where you want to use the far right, instead of doing that chain, you'd want to use a beam clamp to do that. That would be better to do that. If you don't have a beam clamp and you want to use a sling, then you're going to have to get protective padding, and you'd want to get, you don't want to connect it to an endless sling like that, so you would probably want to get something with a link that you can connect into, but you would definitely need protective padding around the sharp corners of that I-beam. Of course, you'd have to match the sling capacity of what it is that you're lifting, and you take your D ratings for the type of hitch that you're using. And synthetics, you can do the same thing with synthetics, but again, you'd have to protect from sharp corners, things of that nature. And operators should be aware of that, hey, make sure that that's happening. And that's usually temporary connections that's happening. If it's a permanent connection and that's how you're doing it, then something's wrong. You should get it properly mounted. So, you think you figured out all the sling angles, you know what you're doing, it comes naturally to you. You've been doing this for 20 years. You ever hear the 20-year guy? I've been doing this for 20 years, don't tell me what to do. I've been operating this crane, I've operated this hoist for 20 years, and they don't want to hear it. They know everything, and nothing can go wrong, right? To me, it's the 20-year people that become the most dangerous. They get too complacent, just like driving, right? We get complacent driving after driving for a long time. So our guard is down, and so even the most experienced person can get hurt, right? So you would think that in that picture there that animal would have known how to properly take that tree down, and certainly did not. So we want to be sure that our operators are trained, and even the most experienced people, we want to remind them of the dangers of lifting loads, whether it's 50 pounds or 50,000 pounds. It could kill you if it falls from the air, and we want to respect that.
Okay, Peter, we have a ton of questions, so hang on to your hat.
I'm ready.
Yeah, I know, this is all good. Let me just, whoops, what did I just do? Hang on one second. I got to maximize this so I can read them all. Okay, the first one is a bit long, so I want to read it, so just let me go through it. We are an entertainment company. Our company performs a check-in process when equipment comes back from the job site, where we look for customer-caused damage, but also our check-in techs actually also perform all the steps of a pre-op inspection. We put them back into the ready inventory in the state so that our on-site operators don't have to perform a pre-op inspection at the moment they're about to get into their work for the day. Is this acceptable as a pre-op inspection when it hasn't been performed directly in front of the exact time the hoist will be used? We usually have 100 to 200 hoists on the job site at 8 a.m. and need to get them into the air in under 8 hours.
My only concern with that is, obviously the power supply. No, I don't have a problem with that. That's a good practice, and they're certifying that everything's working properly and weeding out anything that's damaged. So that's good. There's nothing wrong with, even that, again, another set of eyes is good. This doesn't have to be documented, but I would still, they should still be trained to look at stuff that if they do see something abnormal, maybe somebody missed it. People are human, and someone could miss something. So I do recommend they do their. I know that's a lot of hoist and to check, and they have, Spectrum Entertainment. The show's got to start, and the show has to go on. But again, they still have to take them out of the boxes. They still have to rig them, and you can still look, right? Someone can still take a look quickly because they have to touch the hoist physically, so they can still see what they can see. And but yeah, that's a good practice, and that to me is a good practice, and I don't have any problems with that.
Okay.
Of course, you got to have experienced people rigging them up and make sure they're rigging them properly.
Okay, thank you, Peter, and thank you, Benjamin. Next comes from Lauren. Is there a way we can get the hoist pre-op inspection checklist as a reference for our technicians? Is that something we could share via PDF file, Peter?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
That's nothing priority. No, it's not priority. Nothing priority. So we certainly could share that.
Okay, a proprietary. Yeah, perfect.
That's what I'm trying to say. I can't. Yeah, the word wouldn't come out.
No. Don't worry. You've had a lot of words, so don't worry. Okay, and then Bonnie had a question. It probably was very specific to what you were asking at that time, to mark the directions on the crane. I think she was saying that in Canada, it's mandatory to mark the directions on the crane, and she was sharing that.
Good. Yeah. It's confusing, right? Right, left, forward, backwards. Well, who's right, who's left, depending on where I'm standing and how I'm standing and what's forward and backwards, and that gets confusing. But compass coordinates, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It eliminates the confusion.
Excellent. Thank you, Bonnie. All right, this question comes from Richard. Hoist without upper limit switch in the example of DMAG, chain hoist, OSHA requires checking the upper limit. So how do you get around it if it doesn't have an upper limit switch?
For ANSI hoist, it will have a if it's a wire rope hoist, it'll be an anti-tube locking, and what it'll do is actually it won't be a limit switch per se, but it'll be a reversing limit switch. It'll throw it in reverse. So when they say OSHA requires it, OSHA only falls under top running hoists. Okay, so it's 1910.179, so it has to be a top running crane and a top running hoist. That's the OSHA standard. And but these are B3016 underhung B30.11, and in the standards letters of interpretation, they deem that a slip clutch is acceptable means of a limiting device. But if you read carefully, checking the limit switch, and what it says, check your limit switch, but do not let it'll say do not let the hook contact the hoist. So there's your way around of not checking. Okay, so you got to. I mean, I know this is wordsmithing, but it says do not let the hook contact the hoist. So that is beyond the pre-operational inspection. So that's something we would recommend doing on a, if you wanted to do that once a month, that's fine. That would still satisfy the requirement of a frequent inspection where it's, a month, it says daily to monthly, but certainly not every shift, because if you slip that clutch at the start of every single shift, and you have 3 shifts, or you have different operators coming in throughout the day and they want to do their own check, you're going to wear out that slip clutch by doing that. And so, and we're telling you this as a manufacturer, don't do it. Once a month or once a year is fine, but your operators should be trained never to run that hook at the bottom of the hoist. So, so I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. A couple more. How do you test a chain for stretch? This question comes from Scott.
That would, very good question. What you want to do, it's not going to fall under your pre-operational inspection. This is going to fall under your periodic or monthly inspection, depending on if you have a OSHA crane. OSHA crane chain and wire open hooks have to be inspected monthly if they're top running, double girder. I know it's a little bit beyond this seminar, but and then if it's under hung hoist, it's periodic, which I gave you the criteria for. After you do your visual inspection, you need to measure the chain. Gauge, it's called gauging it, and you have to measure the chain. And in the O&M manuals, they will show you how to measure it. They give you certain lengths of chain and what to measure for, and what's the rejection criteria. We actually sell a for our hoist. Some, not all of them, but some we have actually a measuring stick that I call a Viking club. It has all these like prongs sticking out of it, and you can it's a good measurement. But you have to measure the chain, and that measurement that you take versus the measurement of what the manufacturer says it should be within those increments. That's how you check for stretch.
Okay.
And that's the big difference between a periodic and a frequent.
Okay, how do you determine how much is too much on inner link wear? This question comes from John. How do you determine how much is too much on inner link wear? And we have about 4 minutes left, Peter. So after this question, we'll let you continue to wrap it up. And I think we have a couple more questions after that, which we can take if people want to stay on the call.
We actually have a rejection criteria that we set out that, it's more so than I can explain in this over the phone. But if you're visually seeing wear, especially an electric hoist, we're looking at 5/1000ths of an inch wear. We don't want to get through that case depth. If we start getting through that case depth, it's going to go like a hot knife through butter. So really, once wear has started, no matter how much lubrication you put on it, you can slow the process down. It's going to start to wear out. We do have some criteria. We do have some information. It's like a 10-page handout on how to inspect chains. And it's certainly, I can't answer that question just briefly, but we have a whole on electric hoist on what to look for and things of that nature. But yeah, if you're seeing it, visually seeing it, it's definitely concerning. You want to get some measurements and definitely keep your eye on it and make sure it stays lubricated. But you may, if you're visually seeing that wear, you may want to consider replacing that load chain. And at some point, for some reason, it's either old or it just wasn't lubricated properly, or you probably could have left a suspended load on there, in which we don't recommend doing either. So let's say like a lifting beam. A lot of people will leave a lifting beam on a hook. And so what can happen is the chain can kind of do a pendulum effect, and sometimes only in a couple links. And so it's constantly moving, even though you don't see it, but it's swaying. So that can accelerate wear or give constant movement. So we, taking the load off the hook when it's not in use, lubrication will prevent all that.
Okay, just so you know, we have one question from Dan, one from Trevor, and one from John, as well as something that came in from Bonnie, which I'd like a little more clarification on, Bonnie, if you don't mind. And since we run out of time, like I said, we will have Peter address your questions in an email in the next day or two, so you will get answers to those. I apologize that we've run out of time, but we don't like to keep you longer than we promised. So Peter, why don't you continue, and let's just wrap up this session.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of you guys asked some good questions, and which requires further training than this. Obviously, these are just things, and I'm glad that we're bringing this aware to you guys. But we have overhead crane operator qualified rigging workshops. That's for your riggers and your crane operators to come to, so that they understand how to do this. And by getting trained to do that, they'll keep your equipment in good running order, because we train them not only how to rig, but we do train a lot of inspection techniques and what they should be looking for and what they should not be doing. We also have a chain and wire rope hoist repair certification class, where we go through the entire hoist. You can see there in the picture the guy taking apart. We take apart every hoist, go through wire rope, chain, what to look for, how to lubricate, how to inspect. We have those classes. We have overhead crane certification. It's not listed here, but overhead crane, which we cover, where it's not a repair course. It's a periodic. It's basically a periodic crane inspection from top to bottom, looking at end trucks and runways and electrifications and connections. And it's a 3-day course we do for certification. So that would, for a lot of you on this call that you want to further your education, you really want to get into that. And really, I recommend even if you're not doing your own inspections, but your maintenance crew should be aware of it, should get trained on it. They may not have time to do those types of things, but definitely would want to make sure that whoever's coming in your facilities are doing it right and they have a pretty good knowledge of what needs to be done, especially in between those periodic inspections where a crane operator is bringing things to their attention. They'll have a better understanding of why it's happening by coming to this training.
Okay, and while I'm just going to do a final polling slide while Peter just concludes. We just wanted to get a little feedback. Would you or an associate be interested in becoming a certified crane operator? And Peter, maybe you can speak to that. But we just wanted to get some feedback. Yes, within 1 to 3 months. Yes, within 3 to 6 months. Yes, within 6 to 12 months. Or no, I'm really not interested. We would just like some feedback.
Yeah, what we're introducing now, we do have a crane operator course, and again, crane operators, and depending on what state you are, I know Michigan, definitely they have to be certified, and possibly California, I'm not sure on that, depending on what state, but a lot of states don't require it, but we are offering a crane operator certification. We are a NCCCO examine, we are qualified to do NCCCO exams at our facility in near Buffalo, between Buffalo and Niagara Falls. It's our Niagara Training Center. We have a course, it's a crane course that's set up. We do 2 days of training and prep training for your crane operators. They can go through a course and get licensed to run overhead cranes, and it's something new that we're offering coming in September, and certainly we're excited about it, and we're getting a lot of interest in that. And you know, our facility here, we have 2 overhead cranes that we can run people through it and do the training, and it's all hands-on. It's very little PowerPoint and more hands-on than any other facility that I've ever been to. So it's a really good training. So certainly, if you're interested in that, we can get you more information for your crane operators to do that.
Yes, and on that note, we just want to thank everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate your participation. We do have 2 more. There's going to be another session. This is our monthly safety webinar series. So since you've attended this one, we'll keep you in the loop on future webinars that are coming up. And like I said, this session has been recorded, and we're going to be posting it on our YouTube channel. And we'll be sending you a link this afternoon to it. So if you have other colleagues who would like to see it, or you would like to use it for training in-house, you're more than welcome to do so. And you will have a link to that later this afternoon. So as I said also,